Chapter 1, The Paper on the Table. It was a Tuesday night, the kind of evening you don't expect anything from. The sky was gray, the kind of gray that settles into your bones, and the house smelled like cumin and charred corn tortillas. Vanessa had cooked. She liked making dinner when she wanted something, not in an obvious way. Not in the cliché sweeten the request kind of way. More like she wanted the whole thing to feel casual. Familiar. Like a team effort. Like we were just checking another box together. We sat at the kitchen island, bar stools close, her Spotify playlist humming low in the background. She poured me wine, red, the one I liked that she always said was a little dry for her taste. She smiled, crossed her legs, and reached into her oversized work tote like she was pulling out a receipt, nothing important. What she placed on the table was an envelope. Neat. Sealed with a paper clip. Not thick, but intentional. "What's that?" I asked, wiping salsa from the corner of my mouth. She shrugged, casual, effortless. "Just something I think we should get ahead of." "Don't worry, it's good stuff." The way she said good made me pause. I picked it up. Slid the pages out. It was a title transfer. Quitclaim deed. My name, typed in legal black and white, listed as grantor. Hers listed as grantee. There were phrases like streamlined ownership, asset protection, liability transfer, and domestic partnership risk shielding. I read it twice. She kept eating, like we were still talking about vacation plans. "It's not a big deal," she said finally. "It's just, well, with the way the market's going, and with how volatile your client work's been." I looked up. "My work's not volatile," I said, more evenly than I felt. She smiled again. "No, I didn't mean it like that. Just, you know, you deal with vendors. Contracts. If anything ever went sideways, this protects the house. Protects me. Us." The US at the end sounded rehearsed. Like the last word of a marketing pitch. "Who suggested this?" I asked. Vanessa shook her head. "No one. Just. I was reading an article on asset separation and got curious. It's smart, Logan. My dad did this with my mom's place." Her tone was light, but her eyes were sharp. Measuring. I didn't respond. Just slid the papers back into the envelope and set it down beside my plate. We finished dinner. She brought up a new series she wanted to watch. Asked if we should plan a weekend in Sedona. Nothing about the papers again. Not that night. But the next morning, they were waiting for me. Neatly placed on the kitchen counter, beside my mug. A pen laid perfectly across the top. And a post-it that said, "No pressure. Just smart planning," red heart emoji. I stared at that note longer than I should have. Because Vanessa didn't do casual. She did calculated. And that was the moment I stopped treating the envelope like a favor, and started treating it like a message. Chapter 2, Before the Ring. The first time I saw Vanessa, she was arguing with a barista. Not loudly. Not rudely. Just with that confident, matter-of-fact tone that made people around her assume she was right, even when she wasn't. She was dressed in this tailored off-white blazer and gold hoops that caught the light when she turned her head. Not overdressed, not flashy. Just composed. Like she could have been pitching a tech deck or planning a wedding, and you'd believe either. I was 2 people back in line. She was explaining that the mobile order had said almond milk, and that she had a sensitivity. She wasn't angry, but she wasn't backing down, either. The barista remade the drink without another word. By the time I got to the register, she was standing off to the side, scrolling her phone. Her calm was magnetic. I don't usually speak to strangers. Especially not ones that look like they walked out of an aspirational podcast cover. But I said something. I think it was about almond milk being the new power move. Dumb. But it made her laugh. We sat down. Talked for an hour. She asked questions, real ones. Sharp ones. She knew about asset bubbles and fractional investing. Said she used to work in branding but had transitioned into strategic consulting for boutique firms. When I asked what that meant, she just smiled and said, helping people position themselves correctly. We went out the next night. And the night after that. It wasn't long before she started leaving toothbrushes at my place. Leaving suggestions. Then paint swatches. Then furniture catalogs. She always had a reason. She made settling in seem like her doing me a favor. My sister Monica didn't buy it. She called Vanessa high-performance fake. She's all surface, Monica warned. The kind of woman who builds her brand off other people's stability. I waved it off. Told her she didn't know her like I did. Monica stared at me across the table and said, "That's exactly what I'm afraid of." Back then, I thought Monica just didn't like me being happy before her. Now? I wish I'd listened harder. Chapter 3, Signatures and Silences. For the next 2 weeks, Vanessa didn't mention the documents directly. She didn't need to. Instead, she left subtle reminders. The envelope moved, from the kitchen counter, to the coffee table, to my desk in the upstairs office. Always in sight. Always pristine. One morning, I found it beside my phone charger with a single page folded out. Just the signature line. My name, printed cleanly. A blank space waiting for ink. Vanessa was never messy. That was her whole thing. She asked for big things with small nudges. She let the silence do the talking. Over breakfast, she'd bring up articles she'd read. Couples lose everything when assets aren't protected. Or she'd mention a friend whose fiancé got sued and how lucky they were to be planning ahead. Always hypothetical. Never accusatory. But it added up. One night, curled up on the couch, she leaned her head against my shoulder and said, "I just want to make sure we're aligned long term, you know?" I knew what she meant. But I also knew what she didn't say. Because alignment doesn't start with transferring a deed. It starts with trust. And lately, trust was starting to feel like something she was managing, not sharing. I tried to bring it up, gently. Told her I'd talked to a financial planner once who said the best protection was mutual transparency. I asked if she'd be open to adding both our names to the deed instead. She smiled. Touched my hand. "That's sweet," she said. "But it's not really necessary. You already own it. I'm not asking for control. Just stability." She made it sound like I was overcomplicating things. Like signing a title over was just a love language with paperwork. But in my gut, something twisted every time she said we. Because I couldn't tell if she meant us. Or her and someone else. Chapter 4, The Realtor and the Receipt. I wasn't looking for anything. I was reorganizing the garage, a task Vanessa had been nagging me about for weeks. She said it made the house look unfinished, like we weren't serious about the space. I didn't argue. Truth was, I liked the garage. It was the only part of the house that still felt like mine. I was going through a stack of old moving boxes when I found it, a slim manila folder that must have slipped between 2 crates. It was unmarked, unlabeled. Probably something I threw together during the move. I opened it, expecting old receipts or warranties. And that's mostly what it was. Except for one thing. A small, glossy paper folded in half, a hotel folio from a boutique in downtown. Dated 4 months ago. 2 weeks before Vanessa and I got engaged. I wouldn't have thought twice about it, except it wasn't in my name. The billing name said, Trevor Holt. My first instinct was that it had landed in the folder by accident. Maybe Vanessa used the printer at work, or maybe it came in with some old junk mail. I almost threw it away. But the address linked to the reservation caught my eye. It was our neighborhood. I checked the dates again. It was a weekday, and I remembered, that week, Vanessa said she was on a solo retreat. A 3-day wellness reset in the mountains with no cell service. She sent me one photo of trees. No people. No timestamps. Now I was holding proof that she wasn't in the mountains at all. She was 10 minutes from our house. And whoever Trevor Holt was, he'd paid the bill. Chapter 5, A Perfect Track Record. I didn't ask Vanessa about the receipt right away. That was the first sign I was starting to treat her like a threat, not a partner. Instead, I called Monica. She didn't say I told you so. Not at first. What's his name again? She asked, already typing. Trevor Holt, I said. Apparently he paid for a hotel stay the week Vanessa told me she was off-grid. There was a pause on the other end of the line, the kind you don't interrupt. Monica was a litigator. Sharp, deliberate. She never asked a question she didn't already have a plan for. I'll run it, she said. She called back the next day with more than I expected. He's a real estate agent, Monica said. Mid-level firm. Nothing flashy, but he's listed as co-manager on 3 holding companies, all real estate tied. Shell companies? I asked. Technically legit, but they move properties fast. Flip 'em under buyer financing loopholes, then dump them 6 months later. And Vanessa? Another pause. She shows up in the background, Monica said. Not directly. But there are repeated patterns, 2 cases where a woman matching her description filed as a temporary tenant during escrow, then disappeared after the property changed hands. No criminal charges. No official complaint. But one of the sellers filed a civil claim afterward. Said they were pressured into transferring the title early as a sign of trust. Sound familiar? I leaned back in my chair, pressing the phone harder to my ear. She's done this before, I said quietly. I can't say that for certain, Monica replied. But it looks like you're not the first person she asked to sign over property. I didn't say anything. Because I already knew what I had to do next. I wasn't going to confront Vanessa. I was going to play along. And this time, I'd be the one writing the terms. Chapter 6, He used to own this house. I wasn't supposed to be at the hardware store that day. The contractor had canceled. Vanessa had rescheduled our plans last minute. I had time to kill and a few drawer pulls I needed to return. I was in the paint aisle, comparing swatches I knew we'd never actually use, when a man stepped up beside me and pointed to a sample I was holding. Be careful with that one, he said. Looks great under LED, but turns green in natural light. Trust me. I laughed. You sound like a man who's made that mistake. He smiled. Bought your house, didn't you? I blinked. Excuse me? He pointed again. White 2-story over on Glen Ridge? Black shutters? You've got the oak tree growing too close to the driveway, yeah? Now I was staring. Yeah. Wait. How do you? I used to live there, he said easily. Until about 18 months ago. Sold it to a holding firm out of state. Weird process, but the offer was good. They flipped it to someone else before I could blink. I swallowed. You didn't sell it to a private buyer? Nope. Wasn't allowed to, actually. Contract had a clause. I figured it was some tax dodge. He reached out to shake my hand. Name's David. I told him mine. He tilted his head. You the one who bought it from TH Acquisitions? My pulse jumped. You remember the name? Sure. Weird logo on the papers. Real estate guy named Trevor handled the closing. Trevor Holt. I nodded, thanked him, and left the store without finishing the return. By the time I got to the car, my hands were shaking, but not from fear. From clarity. The house wasn't mine by chance. I'd walked into a story already halfway written. And Vanessa hadn't just stepped into my life. She'd been placed. Chapter 7, Her favorite word is leverage. Vanessa had a way of making manipulation sound like planning. She never raised her voice. Never threatened. She didn't need to. She used calm logic, sprinkled with buzzwords, until every idea felt like it came from you. That was her gift. She didn't push, she pivoted. And lately, her favorite word was leverage. She used it over breakfast, in the car, at the end of texts. "This house is leverage," she'd say, as if it were a compliment. Leverage for our future. For our financial growth. For our brand as a couple. It wasn't that she wanted the house. It was that she wanted what the house could do, how she could position it, use it, present it. "Don't you want this to feel like it's ours?" she asked one evening, sipping tea across from me at the kitchen island. "Right now, legally, it's just you. It should reflect what we're building together." I looked around the room, at the open concept space, the light fixtures she'd picked, the paint color I hadn't fought her on. And for a moment, I almost agreed. But something about the way she said ours stuck with me. Because when Vanessa said ours, what she really meant was mine, with your signature on it. That night, after she went to bed, I started backing everything up. Every text she'd sent about the title. Every email that mentioned next steps. I took photos of the post-it notes she left me, the ones with hearts and reminders like "just smart planning, babe." I exported copies of her messages to my business email and uploaded them to a cloud account she didn't know existed. I even started recording short voice memos after conversations. Not because I was paranoid, because I needed to remember her phrasing. How smoothly she wrapped financial requests in romantic framing. How often she circled back to the idea of partnership only when it benefited her. I didn't confront her. I nodded. Listened. Let her think I was just slow to process. A little cautious. Maybe sentimental. But in reality, I was done reacting. I was collecting. Because if Vanessa thought the house was leverage, then she clearly hadn't seen what happens when the foundation you're standing on is already shifting beneath you. Chapter 8, Monica Sets the Trap. Vanessa thought she was closing the deal. She didn't know I was the one staging the terms. It started with Monica, who, to her credit, didn't even say "I told you so" when I told her everything. She just opened her laptop, cracked her knuckles, and got to work. "I'll draft something," she said. "Looks like a quitclaim. Same formatting. Same structure. But the language will be buried in the fine print. She won't see it unless she reads every line." "What'll it do?" I asked. Monica looked up. "It'll do what she asked for. On paper. But legally? It'll revoke her access to the trust. Strip her out of the title chain. Reinforce the house as a protected asset under your business umbrella. She signs it, she's signing herself out of the picture." I nodded. It was a gamble. But so was loving someone who counted on you not reading the details. I waited until a Friday. Vanessa liked Fridays, end-of-week energy, red wine nights, the sense that everything could be handled after the weekend. We'd just finished dinner when I pulled out the envelope. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her. "About partnership. About planning ahead." She smiled like I'd finally come to my senses. "I talked to Monica," I added casually. "She helped me restructure the title in a way that protects both of us." Her mouth tightened just slightly, but she kept her tone light. "You brought in Monica?" "Just for legal phrasing. I figured it's cleaner this way. Easier to process." I slid the document across the table. She picked it up, flipping through with her usual breezy confidence. The pages looked familiar. Too familiar. Because Monica made sure they would. Same font. Same layout. Same heading. Only difference was the clause she buried on page 2, the one that eliminated any future claim to ownership from parties not explicitly named on the attached trust. And the trust? Was mine. Solely. Vanessa signed it without blinking. "See?" she said, passing it back to me. "This is why I love us. We moved together." I smiled. Not because I agreed, but because I knew something she didn't. She'd just signed her own exit strategy. and handed me the pen to do it. Chapter 9, the email she forgot to log out. It was the smallest mistake she'd made. Vanessa never left her tech unattended. Her laptop was usually snapped shut before she even stood up. Her phone stayed on silent, face down, always at arm's reach. She moved through life like she was constantly aware of being watched, and wanted to control the frame. But that morning, she forgot. She was rushing out the door, something about a massage she'd double booked or a meeting that had been moved up. She kissed me on the cheek, said she'd be back before lunch, and left her MacBook open on the kitchen counter. Still logged in. I wasn't looking for anything. Not at first. I walked into the kitchen to grab a bottle of water, and there it was, the soft glow of her inbox. Not her main email, either. The handle didn't match the one she used for work. This one was older, messier. No profile photo. Just a string of numbers and her initials. And right there at the top of the inbox. Transfer timeline. I froze. It wasn't the subject line that stopped me, it was the sender. Trevor Holt. I reached for the mouse. My pulse had slowed, not quickened. There was no spike of rage, no sick twist in my gut. Just a heavy, steady quiet, like something I'd been waiting for had finally stepped into the light. I opened the email. He's still asking questions. You said this would be done by last week. I've got a buyer lined up and we need to lock the timeline. There was a reply beneath it, hers. Short. Confident. Relax. He's close. I had him sign a version of the transfer. He thinks it's mutual asset protection. Once I update the record, we're good to go. I read it twice. Then a third time. Each word sunk like sediment settling at the bottom of a glass. Trevor had the buyer lined up. Vanessa had the paperwork. And they thought I had no idea. They thought I'd given her the house. Handed it over like a clueless groom sleepwalking into escrow. But they didn't know what she'd actually signed. They didn't know Monica had buried a clause 3 layers deep. They didn't know the house was now protected under a trust they couldn't touch. I clicked through the inbox slowly, methodically. There were more messages. Details about the transfer process. Notes about which notary to use. A Google Drive folder titled Exit Packet. Even a draft of an email she planned to send me once the deal closed, something about alignment and personal growth. I didn't copy anything. Didn't forward the emails. I didn't have to. Monica already had everything she needed. I closed the laptop gently. The kitchen felt colder than before. Somewhere between the dishwasher and the countertop, I stopped being someone she could manipulate. She just didn't know that yet. Chapter 10, Plan B is always bloodless. Vanessa didn't notice the shift right away. That was the thing about her, she was so used to leading the narrative that she never considered I might rewrite it behind her back. To her, I was still the safe one. The stable one. The one who hesitated at the edge of conflict while she danced across it in heels. She thought she was winning. And I let her. She started coming home later. Started taking longer showers. Her explanations for where she'd been were thinner now, half-hearted. One night she claimed she'd been at a networking event for conscious real estate professionals. Another night she said she was at a full moon circle, but came home smelling like expensive bourbon and someone else's cologne. I said nothing. I asked nothing. I didn't have to. Because I wasn't trying to fix the relationship anymore. I was building the off-ramp. Quietly. Precisely. I followed the protocols Monica gave me. Filed the internal trust paperwork. Finalized the title revision through a secondary entity we'd created months earlier. Everything was locked behind corporate protections and non-disclosure triggers. Even if Vanessa tried to undo it now, she'd hit a wall of language written specifically to freeze her out. She was planning her exit. She just didn't know mine had already been executed. The day she made her final move, a soft, strategic exit full of grace and control, I acted like I was surprised. She stood in the living room holding a suitcase and saying she needed space to realign. I nodded slowly, even offered to call her a car. She smiled at me like I'd finally understood her brilliance. But I was smiling for another reason. Because the house she thought she was walking away from, with a plan to sell it behind my back, was already wrapped in reinforced steel. She hadn't just lost the leverage. She'd never held it to begin with. Chapter 11, When the House Sold Itself. The doorbell rang on a Wednesday afternoon. I was working from the upstairs office, reviewing invoices, listening to ambient rain on loop, pretending things were normal. From the window, I watched a sleek black car pull into the driveway. A man in a blazer stepped out, phone in one hand, folder in the other. He looked like a buyer. And I already knew who sent him. I waited at the top of the stairs while he rang the bell again, then made my way down slowly. When I opened the door, he smiled like we had an appointment. Logan Pierce? That's me. Great. I'm Mark Chen, representing the DaCosta offer. Vanessa said 3 o'clock worked? I blinked once. Offer? He glanced at the folder, confused. Yes, this is the walkthrough. The property's listed under V. More, but the title says, well, actually, that's what I'm trying to confirm. I stepped out onto the porch, folding my arms. She didn't tell you I live here? She said you were moving out, he said carefully. Said the transfer had already been initiated and that I could meet the buyer's agent next week. I nodded slowly. Well, that's interesting. He hesitated. So you're not aware of the sale? I smiled then. Not with malice, with clarity. Oh, I'm aware, I said. I'm also the trustee of the entity that owns this house. Vanessa doesn't have signing authority. She never did. Mark's face changed. Not panic, not yet. Just confusion steeped in unease. You might want to review your paperwork, I added. And while you're at it, check who actually filed the deed revision 2 weeks ago. He took a step back. So? There's no showing today? No showing, I said. But tell Vanessa I said thank you. She just handed me proof of intent to sell stolen property. He blinked. Sorry? I waved it off. She'll understand. Then I shut the door. And for the first time since she left, I finally felt like I was home. Chapter 12, The Notary Who Spilled Everything. The voicemail came in just after noon. Blocked number. Short message. Hi, this is Raj from Elite Remote Signing. I'm confirming the mobile notarization scheduled by Vanessa Moore for 3 p.m. today. Just need to verify the borrower's ID before arrival. Please call back if anything's changed. I listened to it 3 times. I hadn't scheduled anything. But Vanessa had. And she'd used my name? I called back pretending to be someone else. Just Logan's assistant. Friendly. Curious. The notary, Raj, didn't ask many questions. He thought I was in on it. Yeah, so Vanessa said you'd be home. It's a single-party signature, so it'll just be her name on the packet. Looks like a cash-out refee. Big one, too. How much? I asked, voice level. $450, he said. Nice pull, honestly. House must be solid collateral. Solid, sure. Just not hers. Appreciate the heads up, I said. There's been a mix-up on our end, so we'll need to reschedule. No problem, Raj said. Let me know when the documents are updated. It looks like this was expedited, so I'm sure her rep will follow up. Her rep? Trevor. Everything clicked into place then. She hadn't just planned to sell the house, she'd planned to pull equity out of it first. Fast money. Big exit. The kind of move you only make when you think no one's looking. I hung up. Saved the voicemail. Logged the number. Then I forwarded it all to Monica. Tell me that's enough, I wrote. She replied within 5 minutes. It's more than enough. We've got her dead to rights, misrepresentation, fraudulent intent, attempted conversion of a secured asset. And she just left a digital paper trail with a witness. Next stop, court. And this time, she'd have to sign something she couldn't walk away from. Chapter 13, Trevor steps in. He pulled into the driveway like he owned it. Didn't even hesitate. Just parked clean across the curb like he had an appointment. Like this was his meeting to run. Trevor Holt stepped out of the driver's side in a tailored sport coat and mirrored sunglasses, the kind of business casual uniform that says I close deals before lunch. He carried nothing, no briefcase, no clipboard, just his ego and a practiced grin. I watched from the front window. Gave it a beat. Then walked outside slowly. You Logan? He asked, as if we hadn't already danced in the background of each other's lives for months. I am. He smiled, extended a hand. The kind of shake that was more about dominance than greeting. I didn't take it. His smile faltered, but he recovered. Figured we should talk. Man to man. About? Trevor's gaze flicked past me, toward the front door. He lowered his voice slightly, like he thought this was all a misunderstanding we could settle before the lawyers got involved. Vanessa tells me there's been some tension. I get it. Breakups are messy. Property makes it worse. But there's no reason this has to drag out. I raised an eyebrow. Drag what out, exactly? The transfer. She said you were slow rolling the paperwork. The buyer's waiting. There's capital on the line. There it was. He thought I was the holdup. He didn't realize I was the finish line. You got a few minutes? I asked. You came all this way. He nodded, clearly thinking he was making progress. I stepped aside and let him in. Trevor walked through the entryway like a man doing a final inspection. His eyes scanned the foyer, the staircase, the clean lines of the living room, like he was already mentally staging it. I offered him a seat on the couch. He sat down on the edge, legs wide, shoulders square. Still trying to dominate the room. I'll keep it simple, he said. You walk away clean. You get a payout. 5 figures. We take care of the close, you keep your dignity. No hard feelings. I stared at him for a long moment. Then walked over to the console and picked up the folder Monica had prepared. I set it on the coffee table in front of him. What's that? Go ahead. Read. Trevor opened the folder. His eyes scanned the first page. Then the second. Slower now. The third took longer. His mouth pressed into a thin line. Inside was everything. Printouts of the emails between him and Vanessa. Her instructions. His replies. The key timestamps from the notary confirmation. The failed showing. The voicemail transcribed and dated. And at the bottom, the revised deed. The one with Vanessa's signature. The one that made all of this officially hers. To walk away from. He looked up. None of this holds weight. It already did, I said calmly. The trust owns the house. You too? You're just ghosts in the system. You recorded that notary without consent? I didn't have to. He left me a voicemail. On my number. He identified the transaction and the party involved. He confirmed Vanessa's intent. That's enough. Trevor swallowed, hard. You don't want to take this to court? I leaned forward, elbows on knees. I want nothing from you. I'm not suing for damages. I'm not calling the press. But if either of you so much as touches this property again, if one more fake buyer shows up at my door, if one more escrow email hits my inbox, I'll bury you both in litigation and discovery requests until your names are permanently sealed under public record fraud alerts. Trevor didn't respond. He stood slowly. Tucked the folder back together like it might explode if he wasn't careful. On his way out, He paused by the door. She was never going to stay, he said. I nodded. Good. Neither are you. He didn't look at me again. Didn't say goodbye. He just stepped out into the sunlight and walked back to his car, shoulders tighter than when he arrived. And as the door clicked shut behind him, I realized something. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need chaos. I just needed him to see what it looked like. When the Mark flipped the script. Chapter 14, The Courtroom She Didn't Expect. It wasn't a dramatic courtroom. No oak paneling or gasps from the gallery. No grand entrances or last-minute objections. Just 4 people, fluorescent lighting, and a case file thick with receipts. I sat in the back row of the hearing room, quiet, centered. Monica had offered to sit with me, but I told her I'd rather be alone for this. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to feel every second of it. Fully. Undistracted. Vanessa sat 2 rows ahead, with her attorney, some slick-suited litigator who looked more annoyed than invested. She wore pale gray, the kind of soft, neutral blouse that photographs well. Her hair was straight, her heels were quiet, and her expression was pure composure. Like none of this was real. Like she was just here to clean up a misunderstanding. She never looked back at me. Not once. Judge Melrose entered briskly and took her seat behind the low bench. She didn't smile. Didn't introduce herself. Just opened the folder already waiting in front of her and flipped to the first page. Ms. Moore, she said, eyes still scanning, you're requesting that the court reverse a quitclaim deed filed 3 weeks ago. You claim the document was signed under misleading conditions. Is that correct? Vanessa stood. Yes, Your Honor. Were you aware of what you were signing? I believed I was signing a mutual protection agreement. I was told. Melrose looked up. You were told? Vanessa hesitated. I was under the impression the deed would preserve my financial interest in the property. You have prior experience in real estate transactions, yes? I've consulted on brand side positioning. Not legal terms. Melrose turned another page. This is your signature? Yes. This is your email. Vanessa's lawyer cut in. Your Honor, we argue that the document, while signed, was drafted with language our client was not fully briefed on. It lacked sufficient disclosure. The judge didn't flinch. You're referring to the clause clearly outlined on page 2? The one explicitly stating all claims of ownership are revoked by the signing party and transferred to a protected trust held solely in Mr. Pierce's name? Silence. Melrose continued, flipping pages with precise rhythm. This case isn't about misunderstanding. The court has reviewed email exchanges between Ms. Moore and a Mr. Trevor Holt. In those exchanges, she discusses plans to sell the property and refers to Mr. Pierce as unaware of her timeline. She also references a notary-confirmed refinancing attempt, without legal claim to the deed. Vanessa's face didn't crack. But I saw her jaw shift. I didn't move. I didn't gloat. I just let the truth do what it always does when given a courtroom and a calm audience. Melrose set the folder down and clasped her hands. Petition is denied. The court finds the deed legally binding, the trust valid, and the attempt to circumvent ownership rights unsupported. Further action may be warranted under civil fraud statutes. But for now, this matter is closed. Her gavel didn't fall. She just stood. And walked out. Vanessa didn't. She froze for a moment, like her body couldn't quite process what had just happened. Then she gathered her things slowly, deliberately, and made her way to the exit. Still no eye contact. Still no words. She walked out of that courtroom the same way she'd walked into my life. Quiet. Calculated. Certain she'd win. But this time, she walked out empty-handed. Epilogue, signed, sealed, untouchable. The house is quiet now. No soft jazz in the kitchen. No color-coded meal plans on the fridge. No stray earrings on the bathroom counter. Just the hum of the AC and the occasional creak of the old wood floors, reminders that this place breathes, even when it's still. I didn't change much after she left. Didn't repaint. Didn't rearrange the furniture. I didn't need to reclaim the space because the space had never really been hers, no matter how many scented candles she lit or art prints she nailed to the walls. The deed said what words couldn't. And now, it says it loudly. A week after the hearing, an envelope arrived. No return address. My name written in delicate cursive. Inside was a single page, the original transfer form she'd wanted me to sign. The real one. Untouched. Unsigned. I laughed. Not because it was funny. But because it was so perfectly her, a final attempt at framing herself as misunderstood. As if to say, see? I never went through with it. But I already knew she hadn't. Because I never gave her the real document. I placed the envelope back inside my filing cabinet, right next to the notarized trust paperwork. Then I locked the drawer. Not out of paranoia. Out of habit. Out of closure. Out of peace. Sometimes I think about what she would have done if I'd signed the real papers. How quickly she would have sold the house. How easily she would have rewritten the ending. But the thing about rewriting history is, it doesn't work when someone's saving the drafts. She told me to sign the house over. So I did. Just not to her.
Thanks so much for watching. If you love a good revenge story, or if you've ever dreamed of getting the last word without saying much at all, you're in the right place. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new savage ending. Because around here, karma always hits different.